All right, hopefully that looks, that PowerPoint look big for you there?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. My name is Brett Wolf, and I'm housed within the Ag Economics Department at UK, but I work pretty closely between the horticulture and Ag Economics world. I also have some responsibilities in sustainable agriculture, as well as within the Center for Crop Diversification. And I appreciate that plug, April. And my advice would be to Google it too. But if you like to go straight to the site, it's www.uky.edu/CCD. So just the UK website/CCD. And we got all kinds of stuff, some of which I'm going to be talking to you about tonight. So down there in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that Kentucky Proud logo. I know April just gave a shout out to that program, and I'm going to be talking, I'll mention briefly opportunities to use another aspect of the Kentucky Proud offerings, which is a cost share for marketing materials, where you pay a little, they pay a little to get you things like signs, to run social media campaigns, and other stuff like that. But I also want to say thank you to the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program, which is a federal program that is then administered through KDA, because they provided some of the funding to develop this curriculum. So I just want to say thank you to them before I jump in. So to me, the question of pricing, I'm going to talk a little bit generally about marketing stuff, but I'm going to talk also specifically about pricing, generally comes down to, in Kentucky farmers markets in this region, the question of whether you're charging enough. It's very rare that I come across markets that are clearly charging too much. It could be because their customers have shouted them down from charging too much too early, but a lot of times it's just because I think we are hesitant, maybe as a grower community, to charge what things are actually worth. But regardless of that, taking that out of the equation, if we approach it a little bit more rationally, ask the question, I would break this down into two subsequent questions. One is, what's the going price? And the other question is, how much does it cost you? So we're going to explore these as two different pieces of this question to break it down. But this is the general overview of the things we were trying to answer tonight, or figure out how we're going to try to go about answering them. So I said I was going to talk briefly about the general concepts behind marketing. This is a relatively old school approach to marketing, and it's kind of simpler. But for a lot of our folks, it still has some lessons to learn. And so they call this the 4 Ps of marketing: product, place, price, and promotion. And so starting with product, I'll take a second. I mean, price is the one we want to get to, right? Everybody's very excited. I even look at the monies. The money's growing out of the soil. Very exciting. But before we get there, I want to think about some of these other things and talk through them. So the first one here is the idea of product. And very specifically, if you wouldn't mind to drop in the chat what the products are that you offer, or that maybe they're your favorite products that you offer. And the thing that I would challenge you to think through is, rather than saying I grow tomatoes, or I grow strawberries, or I grow and produce beef, think a little bit about in what ways that product is special. How is it unique? Because I can go up the street to the grocery store and get strawberries. I can go up the street to the grocery store and get beef. What I can't get is locally raised, transparently raised beef from a person that I know. I cannot get strawberries. I certainly can't get strawberries even in May and June that were picked the day that they were sold to me. I can get some heirloom varieties of tomatoes, but I can't get ones that were weighted and picked ripe on the vine at the grocery store. Certainly can't get those. So as you think about your product and we're moving forward to price, all these things are linked, right? Your product is special in a number of different ways, and that's going to impact the price that you're going to be able to ask. Of course, place, the second P, relates to, it's really people and place, I think of it, but the place is where the transaction is happening, or where it's being bought and sold. If you're in a direct marketing situation, which farmers markets would be, you have an opportunity to communicate information about your products in a way that you simply can't do if you're going to sell it at a grocery store. the customers that come to those places have different sets of values than someone who's just a normal, typical grocery store shopper. And again, the products that are available in that place to those customers are going to be substantively different from those available otherwise. And so again, both of those things are going to factor into what your price is. Now, promotion is that last piece, excuse me, is the one that most of us think of as marketing, but all of these relate to marketing. Understanding your product, understanding where you're selling it and the audience you're selling it to, pricing it correctly, and then telling people about it through your social media, through your road signs, through your going on, local radio shows, through all email lists, all that kind of stuff. That's just part of it. That you have to figure out what your message is and what your product is before you jump into that. So that's the marketing overview here. Again, if you're considering what your product is, think about some of these potential things that have value. Locality is one of those that a lot of people in Kentucky are into, right? A lot of Kentucky customers. We have stuff. It's not super recent, but I would say it still holds true, at least, and from my perspective, that of all of the secondary attributes, the organics or the certified naturally growns or the sustainably grown or something or whatever, people in Kentucky tend to value local higher than most things. The Kentucky Proud brand thing has its own effect on that, but there is certainly a pride and a desire for that localness, potential for a relationship with you, the vendor, etc., and the transparency of that. But all of those things, particularly the localism, tends to be grounded in this idea of quality. Now, in the world of local food and produce, local products in general, quality is kind of a multi-tiered thing, but I tend to think of quality in the local foods context as things like freshness, uniqueness, a certain amount of how would you say it, transparency of this hasn't gone from 3 different trucks handled by a whole bunch of different people. It was picked today and there's a kind of a shorter supply chain, which has a certain value to some people. But if your product is not of high quality, in general, we know that local food consumers aren't going to be that excited about it, because as much as we all like the idea of supporting local farmers, supporting local economies, one of the main drivers people are using or following, one of the main reasons that they're purchasing local, we know, is because they perceive certain aspects of higher quality. And so make sure that you're delivering a high quality product if you're going to charge a premium, higher quality price. So again, what the heck? I thought we were going to talk about pricing, but I want you to keep in mind, as you think about your prices, you're not the grocery store on a number of different ways. And so as we go and think about what is the going price, we can't just go roll down to Save a Lot or roll down to Kroger or whatever and look at the prices and say, okay, cool, that's what they're charging for tomatoes, I'm going to do it. In some cases, you may not even be able to do that. So as we go into answering what's the going price, we want to have stuff that is tailored to at least comparable information. In the real estate market, I live in a small 50s ranch in Lexington. When I go to price my house out, I'm not going to go to a rural place of the same size house, and I'm not going to go to the fancy neighborhood to get a comparable price. I'm going to go to similar houses like mine. And so we want to do that same thing with our products here. So I'll show you a couple of different places where you can find some comparable pricing information to find out what that going price is. So the first one here is the Center for Crop Diversification. Hopefully you'll forgive the plug, but this is information that we collect and share that is really valuable. It's a lot of work to put together, and it's kind of relatively rare to find this type of information. And so it's not just this started before I started. I've just kind of tried to steward it forward, and we've grown over time. But on our Center for Crop Diversification website, we post farmers market prices from across Kentucky every single week during the season. So this is for a wide variety of crops. Now, tomatoes on price reports in April. And similarly, you won't see asparagus in August on the reports. We change stuff out to try to make it useful. But across the season, I would say we report on around 80 different crops. We also do eggs, honey, a minimal amount of value added in baked goods, that kind of stuff. But this kind of information can be super helpful. This is all available on our website, totally for free. It's part of the extension service. Center for Crop Diversification is a UK program. And let's see if I have that. I'll come back to this in a second, but we also have 3-year average reports that might be useful. There is also a portal available from the US Department of Agriculture. It's a little more complicated to navigate. I actually have a video on our YouTube page that shows you how to get in here and pull this information that I'm looking at. But what you can pull are these national retail reports. And what these will do, it's an easy way to get a quick snapshot of what retail prices were, advertised retail prices at grocery stores over the last week. So you can see here in the middle, it says issued weekly. And I pulled this screenshot a long time ago because I talk about these a lot. But and so you can just see in the stores with ads, artichokes were going for $2.30, I think, each, and asparagus was going for $2.23 each. And so they have these. It explains what these averages are on the sheet a little more clearly. But it's just a neat way to get a sense, because one thing that sometimes people perceive is that grocery stores are way cheaper than farmers markets. And sometimes they are. That is the case sometimes. But there are other times I've pulled some of these reports and been kind of shocked, especially at the regional level, been shocked at how relatively expensive some of that stuff is, especially in seasons. Pretty wild. So this is just another snapshot of data that can help you figure out what that going price is. I have here this, and we actually have an updated one of these from 2016 to 2018. And if you all cross your fingers with me right now, we should have one of these out for 2018 to 2021. I get to write it, and they're finished writing it. And that should be out hopefully within the next couple of weeks. We got to do reviews and all that kind of fun stuff. But what this shows are just some average prices across seasons. And so I have some here. We did a small fruit project earlier in 2021. And this is some of the information we pulled out of these. So just to give you an example of, again, what were the going prices for these products over the last few years. And so if you can see, the blue line is 2019. The yellow line was that crazy year we called 2020. And then 2021 was this kind of odd time period of kind of like more normal, but not really, especially in terms of prices and stuff like that. And so what we can see here, what I see here, and, let me know, drop a comment in the chat if you see something that I'm missing or that's kind of interesting. That 2020 early, during when everybody was kind of freaking out and buying toilet paper, they also stopped and bought blackberries. And the prices for blackberries at Kentucky's farmers markets early were considerably higher than they were the year before. And then, and then this year, interestingly, those prices were considerably lower. All my years now are all scrambled up. There was one year in there where we had a weird frost and it caused problems with blossoms. I can't remember which year that was. But that'll go into our actual report when we write it up. But what this allows me to, one of the things I'm seeing here is that this is per pint prices. If I'm looking at this data and I've been selling my blackberries for $5 a quart, I am taking a real hard look at what I've been doing, because that is just not in the range even. Similarly, blueberries here. Blueberries didn't have as hot of a start in 2020, but by the time the season was over, the prices had gone down. So that's pretty wild. But here's a counterexample. Strawberries, 2020. I mean, I had to double check, and I was like following up with markets trying to make sure that this was right. The strawberry prices, this is a price per quart now, were up over $7 on average. That's on average. And that includes some rural markets. This wasn't just, one crazy Lexington vendor. And then 2021, things came a little bit back to normal. But in my opinion, just from what I had seen and what I know of the cost breakdowns, this was a welcome and necessary correction to some of the pricing. Farmers markets tend to stick on prices and stay on prices for like 5 years. They're real hesitant to raise them. And I remember thinking, how on earth are you selling, for such a short window crop that's so perishable? How on earth are we selling it for below $5 a quart, or around $5 a quart being kind of the standard? And so, as much as it may pain your customers, that rise up to, $6 plus per quart, to me felt a little more in line with some of the costs of production and all that kind of fun stuff. So again, if you're still charging $4 a quart for your strawberries, this is like the going rate stuff. And these include rural markets and urban markets. In the actual price report summary document, we will break them out into urban markets and rural markets, so you can see the price difference there. And on our weekly reports, we actually report which market had which prices. So these summary things can, there's a little bit of a caveat there, but again, we're just trying to make sure that we're in the ballpark to consider how much we're charging first or what that going rate is. Just for your interest, we also provide produce auction price reports. And so these are some summaries from that for those same crops. So we see blackberries here. For 2020, prices were high and stayed high. We did not have necessarily the curves, the blue and green lines, the ones that are kind of like that V or U shape. That is more of like a normal, typical distribution of what you would expect for prices. If you compare that to like farmers markets, which are just full of crazy people who keep similar prices all year and maybe taper off. This idea of the price starting high in the first part of the year, getting low when production is at its peak, and then getting high again when the supply goes back down is more like what we would expect. 2020, the anomalous, crazy year, but 2020 and 2021 looking pretty similar there. You can notice this is dollars per pint. So this is around on the left-hand side at that first part, it's around 250, 225, 250. If we go back to farmers markets, the per pint price is, at the low end, 325 up to 450 per pint. And so, as we know, some markets do reselling of local products from the auctions. And so the idea of that premium, taking a premium for going and sitting and selling it at a farmer's market is something, but the general ways that these prices move together is we expect that to happen. We expect that if auction prices are higher, farmers market prices are higher too, typically. Blueberries, again, 2020, the craziest year ever. There's probably lots of reasons for that, but the ways that the blue and green line kind of track together, for the auctions at least, prices were kind of back to normal in 2021. Similarly here for strawberries. But you could see even in 2020, the strawberry per quart price was way up there, around $7. And that's probably why we saw some of the even higher prices at farmers markets, was because there was a reselling process happening. This is just to give you an example of what you can expect when you go and download the 3-year average reports. This is what I was saying. We break this out into urban and rural and give a little more information. And we do this for, I think, like 18 different crops, something like that. And so it includes all the big boys like tomatoes and sweet corn and stuff like that, and also some of the other stuff. It's not just, I had the blueberry and blackberry data more recent, so I wanted to share that, but you can kind of see what these things look like. So tomato prices, this is a pretty wild, like this is from, again, back 2018. So this is not new or recent data, but a couple of things that I notice here, if I'm thinking about setting prices and figuring out what the going rate is, remember that's what we're trying to do here, trying to answer question number 1 first. Am I in the ballpark? If I'm selling in an urban market, I am looking at this higher price, this blue line up here. If I'm selling in a rural market, I'm looking at the lower line. And so that's part of that place consideration, right? Not to say that if you're in a rural market, you couldn't charge more, but just to say that this is what a lot of customers in rural markets are seeing, is more of the orange line dynamic. That's just something to think about. Another thing that I'm seeing is, though it does move left to right down, i.e. the price goes down over the season as people are less and less enthused for their BLTs and salads and all that kind of good stuff. In general, though, the price there is relatively flat compared to what you see in some other markets. And so this tells me that a lot of farmers markets aren't adjusting their prices, especially 416, 430, 514. I mean, for those of you who are familiar with tomatoes and growing them, that's around the time that most people are thinking about putting their tomato plants in the ground, which means in order to have this product, and we do our best to ensure that these are actually locally grown products, in order to make sure that you're having that in the ground, or sorry, making sure you have that available for market, you're almost certainly in a supplemental heated greenhouse and or supplementally heated high tunnel of some sort with an early variety and all that kind of stuff. It requires a lot of work. I used to grow vegetables in high tunnels for research programs, and it requires a lot of work to get tomatoes that early. And so it's kind of almost surprising to me that we don't see the early prices even higher than that, but we don't. And but if you compare that with, so this is from the produce auctions from that same time period, 16 to 18, you can see that the absolute amount that they're worth is not really what we're looking at, but you can see the prices at the beginning of the season are way, way higher than they are. I mean, we're talking about literally $2.50, $3 a pound compared at the peak of the early season compared to under 50 cents per pound. Now go back here and say, okay, the early season stuff at the farmer's market's $3.50 and it goes down over time. So I guess what I would take away from this is the next step that we're going to talk about is considering costs, considering how much it costs you to grow. Early stuff where you're having to do a lot of extra work can cost more. And so you might think about adjusting your prices over the course of the season if that's not too much of a hassle, or you may keep one price the whole year for a very strategic reason. But in any case, farmers too long didn't read. The farmers markets are weirdos when it comes to price dynamics as compared to some markets like a produce auction or wholesale markets or whatever. Weirdos in a good way. I love farmers markets. I work with them all the time. So we have a certain sense now of how we're going to go forth and assess what the going price is. Another way to do it is to travel to other markets, poke your head around at your market, and just see what people are charging, so you can get a sense of what that going rate is. I will tell you, as a cautionary or whatever you want to say, cautionary tale or caveat, etc., I know several very successful growers in this state who have told me, Brett, your price reports are essentially worthless to me because everyone in the state is charging way too little. And I don't take it, I love feedback. I prefer to hear that kind of thing, but they say we don't even look at those. I mean, it's great that you do them, but we don't even look at those because people are charging way too little. Like it's not even in the ballpark of what we can charge and what people will pay, et cetera. And so they look at some other price reports and try to go their own way. They've also been doing it a while, so they have a sense. So what I'm telling you is when you go and look at my information, there are some people who would say that is very, very conservative data. So if you're below that, that means you might be way, way out there. Just a thought. So the second question here is, what does it cost you? And this is one where it could be that the going rate is here and the amount that you would have to charge is here. And that means you may not be able to sell that thing profitably. It could be that what it costs is here, what you're currently charging is, somewhere way down here, and you could be bringing it up to here to make more money. That's another way that this could work. So we're going to think about how much it costs you. I'm going to take you through like a kind of like conceptual example here in a second. But before I do, I'll mention on our website, the CCD website, I've mentioned this, you can just Google UKY CCD, you can Google Center for Crop Diversification, and you might even Google me and it might find it. But we have these things called enterprise budgets, which sounds a little bit intimidating, I think. They are not. All they are simple sheets. You can get printable ones. We have printable ones, and we also have digital, like Excel-based spreadsheet ones. And we also have large scale and small scale versions of these for a bunch of different crops. And so here I have the small scale tomato budget pulled up here. And you can see up there in the top left-hand corner, it's 1/10 of an acre, 8 100-foot rows. You could easily split it and do smaller than that even. What it has are, this big red line or big red arrow indicates these little pre-filled ballpark examples of expenses. Now, these are not how much it's going to cost you to do this. They are guesses based on when these things were generated. What you can do is you can edit it and put in your own information about this is actually how much I spent on fertilizer. This is actually how much I spent on stakes and twine to generate this information. So you can use these, and some of your agents will be familiar with how to use budgets in general for grain or for other enterprises. But these are, again, scaled down. Some of them are like per 1/10 of an acre. Some of them are even like per 100 row feet for something that's really more intensive. So these are the real like meat of the how to assess costs. I'm going to give a little simplified stripped down example here in a second. But the next slides are just examples. There's nothing in them that you should take as gospel except just the general principle. So I have here a list of costs. These are Brett sitting down and just scratching out just estimates of what I think if I was going to make a run at doing. We have a small, for Lexington, it's a big lot, for a big, house lot. For anywhere be outside Lexington, it's pretty small. But if I were going to try to grow maybe 50 plants worth of tomatoes and take them and sell them at a booth, here's what I think, ballpark of what I could do. None of these individual costs are like 100% accurate. And at no point should you say, Brett told me I should charge this much, or Brett told me this is how much the costs are going to be. Your costs may vary, but the general principle here will be kind of in the ballpark. So I have things like all the inputs. One of them that you may argue with me about are the labor costs here of going and sitting for 10 weekends for 8 hours at a booth. For $10 an hour, $10 an hour is pretty low. And I would just say, for those of you who are not interested in valuing your own time, try to pull somebody off the street and get them to sit for 8 hours a weekend for 10 weekends without paying them, and see how that goes. So we always encourage factoring in labor costs into what you're doing. So I'm not going to argue with anybody about it, but that would be what I would encourage. And one that I've left out here just because it's so variable is booth fee. In rural areas, this can be free. It can be $25. At some of the downtown Lexington markets, it can be in the thousands of dollars for the season. So factoring that in, and not even factoring this in, on top of that, to grow $50 worth of plants and sell them, to grow 50 plants and sell them, this is about how much I'm projecting I'm going to have to spend in labor time and everything else combined. Okay. So here on the left hand, we have yield projections of, if I'm doing a great job, I might be getting 25 pounds per plant down that bottom row. If I don't have such a great year, I might be yielding 15 pounds per plant. So if you take that first column and multiply it times the second column, that's going to give us our total yield. So off those 50 plants, I'm going to get somewhere between 750 pounds and 1,250 pounds. If I'm doing that over 10 weeks, that's how much I could probably expect to take to market each week. Now, we all know that plants don't spit out tomatoes in perfect 10-week increments, but this is all just kind of a thought experiment to just give you a sense. So if we take, and going back here real quick, so the best case scenario, we have 125 pounds of tomatoes to take to market every week. Worst case, we have 0 probably, but like, let's say not so good case, we have 75. So if we jump over here, we've now moved from the realm of production, where all the things are awesome and we can do everything and control everything and grow really great stuff, lots of it, to the world of sales, which is can be a little more finicky. And so if that following that top line across there, if we were to sell 100 pounds of tomatoes, so we had a pretty good production year, we have 100, we sell out every weekend for $1.25 a pound, that's going to give us $125 per week, $1,250 across that 10-week period. Now, let's say out of our 10 weeks, it rains 3 or 4 of those Saturdays, and our average weekly sales drops down to 75 pounds per week. $1.25 per pound, $93.75 per week, $937. Let's say it rains more than half of those weeks and its competition's crazy, et cetera. Let's just drop all the way down to that bottom line. Bad year. All we're selling is 30 pounds of tomatoes per week. At $1.25, that's $37.50 per week, $375. Remember, it cost us almost $1,250 to grow these things and grow and market them. So if we go back here, we have to have a best case scenario or a very good case scenario just to almost break even on those time commitments and pay ourselves $10 an hour to do it. So we're going to do it's a variation of what we call a sensitivity analysis, where we just change one thing and see how it goes. So instead of $1.25, if you see that gray column highlighted, now we're going to charge $2 a pound. So we're thinking about, okay, 100 pounds, $2 a pound, that's $200 a week. That's $2,000 across the season. Let's say we have just an okay season and we're selling $75 per pound. 75 times 2, 150, 1,500. Keeping in mind, our costs were $1,250. So suddenly, instead of having to have a great year, we can just have a pretty good year and still make some money and pay ourselves $10 an hour. What if we were to go crazy and charge $2.50 a pound for that same amount? Now, suddenly, the mathematically inclined among you, we will see that $2.50 is twice the price of $1.25, which means that we can sell half as much and still have the same outcome. So if it happens that we get rain on a number of Saturdays that we're selling, and we're only able to move an average of 50 pounds per week, suddenly we're still going to come out ahead and again, pay ourselves $10 an hour in the process. So I just want to emphasize, before I move on to that. So this is the summaries here. If at these different, selling these different amounts, and then the columns are the different prices. And then this is, if you take the amount, the total revenue that we brought in, the big number, minus our costs, this is how much profit we're going to make off of those things. And so you can just see by adjusting our price up, we take the pressure off having to sell quite as much, and we increase our odds for making a profit. This is really basic, but this is the logic behind why I encourage people to raise their prices or think about raising their prices. And just keep in mind, for the person who comes to your booth and they buy, 2 or 3 pounds of tomatoes, for them in that purchase, yes, it is going to cost a couple bucks more. But for you, the impacts can be huge. And again, we're trying to keep in mind that we're factoring this based on costs. This isn't like you just trying, you're not the tomato baron out there to gouge all your customers and try to get as much money out of them as possible. But the reality is, especially with some of the input costs going up and things like that, farmers are real hesitant to raise prices sometimes. And while the price for everything else is still going up. And so I'm not going to go too hard on the hard sell on why you should sell or why you should raise your prices, but this is just something I'll mention. Just to emphasize, these prices that I just mentioned of $2.50 a pound are not crazy outlandish. We had multiple different rural markets. Forget the bougie Lexington and Louisville markets. We had rural markets charging well over $2.50 a pound, $3 a pound, $3.50 a pound for tomatoes. This is just an example for tomatoes because everybody kind of understands it. We had multiple urban markets above $3.50 in 2021. And so again, this is why I'm just trying to tell you the costs that I'm putting into these examples are pretty conservative. They're not pie in the sky if we could only get $2.50 per pound. And that's why pairing some of your cost comparisons with an understanding of the going price that we looked at through those examples and through the price reports is so important. And so I'll just say it's not crazy to ask $3 per pound for tomatoes, no matter what the 10% of your clients who are going to complain about it say. And if they want you to be there to sell them tomatoes in the future, you taking a close look at your costs and understanding that is important. So these are the things that people tell me when they come up to me after the meeting and They've been shooting daggers at me the whole night about, me encouraging people to raise their prices. I'm just kidding. They usually are pretty nice about it, but they don't like the idea of raising their prices. One of the things they say is that they can't charge their neighbors that price. And again, I'm not trying to argue. I don't want to get into it too much, but my response back would be, why is it that your neighbors can expect you to feed them homegrown produce at a loss to you, right? This is not a matter of, well, in the world of just purely profit driven or like mostly profit driven, you're trying to make money through doing farmers markets. That's the thing that we're thinking about. If it's not profitable, you're not going to be able to do it for very long. So why is it that they can expect you to feed them homegrown produce? You're putting a lot of time and energy and effort into that at a loss to them. So the other thing is, this is the price I've always charged, and my response to that is this famous thing now from a number of years ago. But the top line is how much bread prices cost. It's the price of a loaf of bread between 1980 and 2008. You can see it went up and up and up and up and up. And the lower line, is the amount of money that the wheat in that loaf of bread cost, or was the amount that was paid to the farmer for the wheat that went into that bread. So you can see the farmer's share has actually theoretically gone down, but it's the amount the farmer receives has stayed about the same. Now, this is a commodity market, so this is a different thing. You have more control over the prices that you charge, but it's just a general, again, this is the price I've always charged. This is the price we've always got. Everything else has gone up. The price of bread has gone up. Gasoline has gone up. Price of fertilizer has gone up. All those things, and we know that. And this is not just a short-term, inflation conversation. It's just the nature of the way things have shifted. And so if you haven't adjusted your prices since 2015 or 2010 or 2005, that's something you're going to need to really think about. Enough of my soapbox here. So the last thing I'll mention here are some of these pricing strategies. So these are a little bit more outside the box, a little less simple, just a little less simple than, here's my costs, I want to make this much profit, here's my price. This is a little bit more holistically structured than this. So one of these is just premium pricing in general. This is, if you have a product that is extremely unique, it's of an extremely high quality, and or you have customers who value that, who value some aspect of what you've gone through. This could be something like a heritage breed of meat, or it could be certified organic, or it could be the heirloom, whatever, any number of things. If you have a premium product that you can define the characteristics of, and you have an audience that values it, you should be thinking about charging a premium for that product. In general, I think local food can think about charging a premium for the various aspects of localness and quality that it can potentially deliver. But that's kind of another story. So thinking about premium pricing, it could very well be that once you're experienced with doing this, with raising this particular type of meat or raising this particular type of crop, that the costs are actually not that bad. And so you can actually capture even more of a margin because you're able, through your experience and through your savvy, to offer a really high quality product. And so that's really, like, especially in marketing to restaurants and stuff like that, that can be a really nice way to boost your revenue, is by identifying what the product is that you're selling and how it's special, and really communicating that and finding customers who agree enough to pay more. Second one here is bundling. So it's kind of a predecessor to the bulk pricing idea, but in bundling, what we're thinking about is like, this is like the, one for $1, 6 for $5 or something like that. So the idea that if you buy more of these things, I am going to give you a little bit of a break on that. This would be really useful if it is valuable to you to move more product. So for instance, if you're taking more sweet corn to the market than you are possibly going to be able to sell, and there is a value in moving some of that more, a larger volume, than offering it for 50 cents an ear or 75 cents an ear or $6 per dozen. Like, you want to move whole dozens at a time, right? And so again, this is only if you are not going to be able, or you don't, there's no real value to you in moving the entire amount that you have available at that higher price. I'll go ahead and move on to bulk pricing and talk about these two together. We know that there are some markets. We have this nice graphic that we use on some of the marketing basics talks that we give. The other ones that we give. It's like this spectrum of types of markets. And on the one hand, you have like what we would call a value credence market, with a fancy bougie markets who they're more likely to buy small volumes. They're more likely to care about things like certified organic. They're more likely to care about, they're more likely to buy a value added product, a small little, jar of jam rather than make their own. They're typically more likely to buy fruit and things like that in small quantities and consume them fresh. I call them bougie. That's what I grew up calling them. But we like those markets. Those are sometimes people who give a good premium to some of our growers and allow them to continue growing. So it's not a derogatory term. It's just descriptive. But on the other hand, in the other end of the spectrum is like a price market. These are folks who are real price sensitive. They want the best deal possible. They want to buy in bulk. They're more likely to do the canning themselves, so they don't want to buy a pint of blueberry jam. They want to buy gallons of blueberries at a discount and then make their own jam out of it. And so understanding what kind of market you're in, this can help with that. So bulk pricing can be useful sometimes in those kinds of markets so that you sell, a bushel of beans or a bushel of corn to the folks who want to put some up themselves, who want to freeze or can or whatever. I would just caution you that just because your customer wants bulk pricing doesn't mean that you have to offer it. And the reason I say that is if you are able to move the entire quantity of product that you grow at a higher premium individual price, you should really consider doing that. Because why is it that you're giving someone a good deal on it? Now, if I'm not trying to convince you to become the mustache twisting evil farmers market vendor who's just trying to put money above everything else. But I would just say sometimes that bulk pricing, it feels cool and it's great, but like I've picked beans. I've spent weeks of my life picking beans. If you add up all the time that I've spent picking beans, months of my life probably. And I know how long it takes to pick a bushel of beans. And so I would much rather sell those beans by the pound, by the pint, et cetera, or by the pound or by the, quart or whatever, rather than here's a bushel for a real good deal. Cause it's not like we have, if I were able to move those beans at my retail price, no bulk discount, I would look to do that personally. Same way with bundling. Don't feel pressured to give people a deal if what you're growing is this special, unique product. This isn't Costco or Sam's Club or whatever. This isn't the produce auction. If they want to get a bushel of beans, they can go to the auction. Go do that. That's cool. So those are they're things that can be useful to bring folks in, and but there's sometimes where bundling and bulk pricing can cause a little bit of a problem, in my opinion, if we're talking about premium products that are differentiated. The last one I have here is this idea of a loss leader. Some of you all may be familiar with this. The general idea here is that I'm going to offer a product that I know I am going to lose money selling on that individual product, but I'm getting people into my stand or into my store or whatever. And once they're here, they're going to buy some of my other stuff that I make a much bigger margin on. So in a farmer's market context, for instance, it could very well be that tomatoes, you charge $2 a pound, and that maybe you're not going to make much money or you're going to lose money or something like that. But when people come in and buy it, you say, now look, we've got some fresh lettuce that you could make a really nice salad with. They buy 2 heads of salad. You make $2 each on those heads of lettuce, and suddenly the whole purchase is profitable to you. So the loss leader is more of like a marketing strategy where you use one of your products to draw folks in. The other thing about that approach that can work is that we tend to see that farmers market customers will stick with a vendor if they establish a relationship early on in the season. So if somebody comes up to you and buys stuff in May or June and they have a good experience and you're a friendly face and you're a familiar face, they may be more likely to come back and see you. And so you can potentially use some of those products and prices to make that work. Now, I'm not really, the loss leader stuff, a lot of it comes out of more complicated or is used in more complicated marketing plans of people, particularly the businesses that do larger volume. They sell more overall volume product than what we are talking about at farmers markets. But it just is something that you could think about, because in general, one of the main limitations or issues with my tomato costs and returns example is that very few people are just selling one product at a farmer's market, just tomatoes or whatever. And so you really have to start thinking about things in terms of a product mix that, some things are maybe more profitable than others. Some things bring people in. You may make the most profit on cabbage, but unless you're talking to me, cabbage is my favorite vegetable. But outside of weirdos like me, cabbage isn't really the show-stopping vegetable that's going to bring people in and get them excited to come to your market. So things like those fresh fruits and tomatoes and stuff like that, they have a role beyond just the pricing, beyond just as products. They're also a big reason why people come, those crops that people get real excited about. So that's my overview of considering prices for farmers markets. For those folks who are doing meat or maybe like cheeses or stuff like that, the Center for, if the giant word crop in the middle of our logo isn't clear, that we focus on specialty crops, and a lot of our funding relates specifically to specialty crops. And so we don't talk a lot about meat. I will say there's a couple of just general trends that I have seen. One is that people tend to not change their meat prices much over the course of a season. So they will take their couple head of whatever, their 80 chickens for processing, and then they set their price list for that that crop of meat. A lot of times those price lists are available online because they want their customers to know how much things are, etc. So you can look around and find what some of that stuff is. But if you want to talk about, like, in the world of meat, the number of different differentiating, like the heritage breeds, ash-free, grass-fed, grain-fed, organic grain-fed, acorn finished, had a happy life, had a name, were a part of the, all of those different differentiation. It makes it very difficult to compare prices, which is why we don't offer price reports for that stuff anymore. We used to do it and it was just so convoluted and difficult, but I just would encourage you to poke around a little bit and see what some of those prices look like from folks within the state and what they're selling for. But consider your costs as well. Same way with value-added products. It's kind of difficult, but make sure you're comparing to actual local products that are available in retail environments. But I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments or anything else. I am going to drop in the chat a link to, well, maybe I am. Stop screen share. A link to an evaluation, but just a very, very brief survey. If you would not mind to click on that and take it, that would be very helpful. Nice. I'm seeing some of the cool stuff here. Some honey jams, pickle products. I love pickled stuff. First timer considering selling at market, farm eggs, green beans. Man, it's making me hungry. That's awesome. Does anybody have any questions, or April, do you have anything you want me to, clarify or re-emphasize or anything like that?
Brett, can we get a copy of the slides that I can email out to the group?
Definitely.
All right, thank you. All right, if anybody has any questions, if you're in person, you're welcome to do that. I know we have 3 locations. Oh, we have a question here.
What about charging different, I'm thinking about produce. If you've got like some firsts and seconds and thirds as far as quality, is it good to have 3 different prices at the same market, or is it better to, if you've got some seconds, to just leave those at home or try to get rid of them somewhere else?
So a couple of things that I would think about there. One would be, do you anticipate your seconds or thirds taken away from your sales of firsts? Because you're in a farmer's market, in a direct marketing situation, you're really trying to generate as much profit per transaction as you can. You don't necessarily want to offer tons of discounts. However, if you feel like you're going to sell out of everything, I think it would be totally fine to take those. The other thing that you could think about would be to offer, especially for something like tomatoes or something like, squash or something, to make it that for seconds, you got to buy like a 5-pound or a 10-pound box. That would be something I would think about, just so you're not necessarily having, because that's a tricky one. But I do think there has been a real renaissance of the like ugly produce interest, and especially in the kind of the pre-COVID landscape, but I would say still now there has been interest in that. But I would think I would prioritize offering my firsts. And if I were going to offer, if I'm selling out of firsts, then great, bring the seconds and everything else. But because it's not like, those seconds, it's not like it requires any less labor or any less time or any less inputs to produce them. And so if like a bunch of my customers are going for the cheaper option, I'm just, making less money if they might have bought the primary one. So that I think that it's from a sustainable agriculture and the resource use and stuff like that, I love the idea of marketing those things. From a pure generating revenue, I think I would focus on my firsts, and then if the price is higher, and then think about the other things. Yeah, interesting. So I think I can't hear you, but hold on, let me see. It might be on my end.
It was my end. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's
I'm trying
okay.
to do some things at one time. All right. Any more questions anybody has? You're welcome to come off mute right now if you're on Zoom.
So I had a question come in that got sent directly to me on the chat. So I'll read this here. How do you manage differentiated pricing across vendors? So I think that does the market manage the pricing, or are the individual vendors able to shift pricing to drive sales? Is there any guidance on this issue? Yes, thank you for your question. This is probably one of the things that I hear the most, or there's the most enthusiastic discussion of, is there are, so technically speaking, markets should not be setting prices, just in terms of there's a number of different like legal ramifications of price setting. However, in reality, lots of markets do set prices. This is just the way that it plays out. In my opinion, I can at least follow the logic of why a market would set a floor price. We aren't going to sell tomatoes below $1.50 a pound or $2 a pound. I can totally understand that. There are some markets that set a floor and a ceiling, or they set one price and every vendor has to sell it at the same price because they don't want folks undercutting each other. To me, that's the biggest risk, is undercutting. There's lots of folks who deal with this, and there's issues with resellers doing this and selling it lower, or there, all kinds of stuff. A lot of those issues, especially with the reselling stuff, have to be worked out kind of at the board and charter and missional level. Are you going to allow folks to do this, et cetera? However, my encouragement would be to allow vendors to set their own prices and have conversation amongst the group and try to, have some collegiality about, because when you have somebody sell tomatoes for 80 cents a pound it's kind of like nobody really wins in that scenario. And so I do think that I just use tomatoes as an example because it's one that everybody understands. It's a shorthand for a lot of folks, but in general, I encourage conversation, but allowing individual vendors to set their prices, and particularly to kind of start thinking about raising those prices and see what you can do. Because as you saw in that example, raising your price by $1, $2 a pound or something like that can make this huge overall net difference. So the other thing I'll mention, I did not mention, I meant to say something about it in the talk, but this type of conversation is one of those areas that folks have found our price reports to be really, really helpful. And just to tell a very, very brief story, we had a vendor who was actually one of our price reporters, amazing price reporter, really enthusiastic about markets. And she was looking at our price reports and saw that green onions everywhere in the state, except their market, were going for at least $2 a bunch. Green onions, like the most obscure farmer's market crop, but still cool. So she went to their group and had a conversation. They were selling them for $1 a pound. Everywhere else was selling them for $2 a pound all across the state. She took the price reports, this third-party document with, just general information, and said, look, we are giving away our green onions. And so I'm guessing somewhat begrudgingly, her market and some of the vendors and stuff said, okay, cool. We're all going to at least raise our prices to at least $2 and see what happens. They did that. The following week, they still completely sold out of green onions. And again, for the mathematically inclined, $1 times 2 is $2. So they made twice as much money off their green onions that next week, just by a simple adjustment based on that information. So I would encourage you to, take a look at these things and take a look at the prices at your market and just say, look, I mean, maybe there's a little bit of, inter-county competition or something to say, look, they're just down the road, they're selling this for 3 times as much. What are we doing here? And I think folks are sometimes surprised to see that many of their customers don't, can understand a raise in price. And I don't have to sit there and have that conversation with them, so I'm not going to push you to do it. But yeah, I would say in general, there's a blend of different things, but I can at least follow why you would not want to avoid undercutting. I don't exactly understand why you would want to prevent one vendor from selling it for more, because best case scenario, they make some more money. Worst case scenario, their high price drives the customer to you, as the other person in the scenario. So anyway, just my 2 cents on that. I don't know, April, do you have any thoughts on that, or have you all dealt with that?
We have not dealt with that here. I don't know if any of the other agents on have or not, but I don't believe we really have. We, Roseanne, dealt with any pricing. Pretty much everybody kind of chips in. And yeah, we don't resell at this Fleming County market.
Yep.
How does he get his data? His price reports? Who reports the prices to him?
Yeah, so they come from. We have price reporters at, I think we had a total of like 14 markets last year spread out across the state. And the names of the individual markets that reported are available on the weekly reports. And some of them are extension, well, not so much anymore, but they used to be, some of them were extension agents, but a lot of them are market managers, market vendors. And we always welcome people who want to report with us and get included in this to join the price report. It's totally cool. You could just email me and do that. But yeah, but if you pull up the actual price report, you'll see the markets that it's coming from and the day of the week that they reported on, because some of them are Tuesday markets or Saturday markets or whatever.
Yeah, our market here in Fleming County may be interested in.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions in person, on Zoom, in Lewis County or Round County?
I have a question.
All right, Molly, go ahead.
Is there very many markets in the farmers market system that sells like the organic items?
Not a ton. We do have a couple in the Louisville and Lexington areas that have a little bit higher, mostly Louisville actually, but a little bit higher percentage of certified organic vendors. We have we have considered or been asked to report on organic prices specifically in the past, and have just found that there wasn't necessarily a critical mass of folks. But yeah, in general, there's not a ton, none that I know of that are all certified organic. And a few, but this is one of those difficult things, because certified organic, there's been this boom in interest, nationally and globally, really, and increased prices and the growth of the organic movement. We just haven't seen it, at least at the farmers market level, as much in Kentucky as in some other places. There's a group called the Organic Association of Kentucky that we work a lot with, and they could probably answer and kind of plug you in a little bit more directly with stuff around that. But in general, we sometimes include, if someone notes that something was certified organic, we'll throw that in there in the price report. But in general, it's kind of individual vendors, and it's if they're in a place, again, that values that, and will pay maybe a little bit more for that. So not a great answer, but there you have it.
And Molly, I'll send out to everybody a more information about the Organic Association of Kentucky as well. So I'll email that out, and also email out the evaluation link, Brett, that you posted there. If you don't care to email that to me too, I copied it, but I can't guarantee I'll remind myself to paste it before I shut my computer.
Sure.
So, okay, any other questions? Like I said, if you're on Zoom, you can come off from mute right now. It's okay. Philip, do you have any questions in Lewis County?
No, I'm actually not there. I've got Super Hootie covering for me.
Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, no.
All right. Good deal.
Well, if you have stuff come up, or you're kind of trying to look at stuff, feel free to send an email and loop in your local agent and send to me, and we can try to, help figure it out together and get some answers. Because I get the blanket question of, I got this, what should I charge for it? And so I try to head it off a little bit with a talk like this and just say, oh, there's things to think about there. But yeah, feel free. I'm part of the extension service and support your great local agents as much as I can. So let us know what we can do.
Well, thank you, Brett. We greatly appreciate it. And like you said, if y'all have questions after you leave here tonight or whatever, just shoot your agent an email. You can also email it to me, and I will be happy to reach out to Brett as well. So you're more than welcome to do that. Just some reminders. I know this is really weird for you people on Zoom and in person here that sees me looking from computer to out in the wild blue yonder out here. We do have our next session will be our third training of the 4, and it'll be April 14th at 6 p.m. Dr. Rudolph will be discussing fertilizer efficiency and options to save you money. And that's very important this year because fertilizer prices are crazy. Also, I know for folks that wanted to grow organic, we might be able to touch base with her on throwing in some options for that as well. Our last training will be the end of April for senior WIC. Not to panic anybody. That one may not happen. Sorry. That's not my fault. No, don't blame me. Just a messenger. Yeah. So there's like an overhaul happening with the senior and WIC program. Their system that they sent their do the voucher program through, they cut them. They just said, we're not doing it anymore. And so that is going to be something new this year. We don't know when the trainings will be. We don't know. So it may or may not happen the end of April. So surprise. I don't know. We'll let y'all know closer to the time.
I did.
Oh, Amanda, go ahead. Yeah.
I did have a chance to talk to someone in that office. He had called me maybe last week, and they're trying, but he said it's been one thing after another. They're hoping to get it out in time, but that's a hit or a miss at this point. But they're hoping, but they don't want to say for sure just yet, just in case one thing or another falls through. But that, like I said, they're trying, but it's just a matter of if it'll actually happen on time or not.
Thanks, Amanda, for the update. But like we said, we'll keep it as is right now. Fingers crossed of throwing things. It'll happen. If it doesn't, we'll reschedule. We'll figure it out. We've been hearing different things along the way about the program. So I don't want to share anything until we find out for certain what's happening. So we've just been like hearing secondhand different things. So we'll let y'all know about that, but just wanted you to be on the radar that that one may be changing the date. Another reminder I talked about at the beginning, if anybody wants any of the Kentucky Proud at cost items, I'll share that again. People here in Fleming County has it, and I'll email this out to everybody too, but here are all the Kentucky Proud at cost items. Those we can go ahead and order, and I can pick them up, or your agent can, at our regional farmers market training on April the 12th, which will be in Moorhead. Sharon Spencer with the Kentucky Department of Agriculture will bring them to us at that time. So if you can let your agent know, let me know, either way, whatever, by April the 8th at the latest, if you want any of the cost items, I'll email this out to you in the order form. If you can go ahead and let us know what items you want, get us a check before April 12th. If you don't plan on being at Moorhead, that way we can go ahead and pay her, and it'll save you some money, because you'll see on the order form that shipping does cost a little bit extra. Also, there are sweet potato slips that can be ordered if anybody's interested in that. We do need to know by April the 1st. They come in boxes of 1,000. I'm ordering a box for Fleming County. I'm going to give out about 20 plants per person whenever they come in. But if y'all want your own, I can order that, or your agent can order that, whoever. If you want to contact Morgan County office is the one that's coordinating it as well. So those are options as well. I think Lewis County's taking orders. Mason, I know shared it, but I think they referred to Morgan County office. Philip, you said Lewis was doing it. In Brown County, are you all doing it?
I'm going to try to. I'm gonna kind of send out some feelers and see who would actually want them if I did end up getting them, because I don't want to order if nobody's gonna end up actually wanting them.
Right.
So I'm gonna try to put out a poll on our Facebook and maybe try to get an idea of who would want them, but I would like to at least order a box. And if anything, I'll kind of like do a little thing with them by myself, or if people actually decide they want them, then I'll go ahead and do that. So
Okay, so we'll have some options. I'm sure I'll have some left over too, but if y'all
Hey,
want
April.
it. Yes, Meredith, go ahead.
For Mason County, I'm looking for a couple more people to split a box of the red Beauregards. I have 500 confirmed, but if I can get another 500, we'll get that box split between people. And then Mason will be buying a box to give out in 10s or 25s.
Okay, all right. So there's options. What? Go ahead. Yeah. So for a box of the, let me pull up the order form. Sorry, Fleming County people, you get to see my email here. There's different varieties. I was gonna go with, I think we did Beauregard last year. Does that sound right? Am I just talking crazy? Oh my gosh, why is it not moving?
Well, while April's looking, Lewis County guys, call me if you are interested in it. Call me Monday and let me know. I'll be out of the office tomorrow, but I aim to get out the order form first thing Monday morning. So just heads up on that one.
Okay, so the Beauregard is $82 per 1,000 plants. You'll see at the bottom too, you have to pay a $5 membership fee if you're ordering by yourself. If you go through me, I'm already buying 2 boxes or 1 box, I think. The white Bonita is what I'm giving away this time. So that's what I just ordered. So it's $76 for 1,000 plants. But there's other options. There's the Covington and the Muraski. So those are options too. Can y'all see? Y'all? Yes.
April, do you know which ones have the purple leaves?
I'm gonna, the Muraski says it's purple skin with white flesh. So I wonder if that does. I don't know a whole lot, I'll be honest. I don't know a whole lot about sweet potatoes. Anybody else know?
When will they be in?
I want to defer that to Philip. I can't remember when they were in last year. I don't think it says on here. Oh, order should arrive the last week of May. I lied. Yeah. So,
Thank you,
last
April. I
week-
was struggling on that one. I was wanting to say May, but I couldn't remember when.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. I know there was some timing issues last year from getting it from the suppliers, so they don't give an exact date. We usually find out like within a 2-day window, I think, of when they'll be delivered here or delivered to Morgan County, and we have to get them from them, so. All right, any other questions? All right, other than that, I think we're good for this evening. We appreciate everybody being either in person or on Zoom this evening. We did record this, so Philip will get me the link and I'll send the link out to everybody so you can watch it again if you want to. I'll get the presentation from Brett. I'll send that in the email. I'll send information about the Organic Association of Kentucky in the email, and I'll also send his evaluation link in the email, as well as the at cost order form, and also the flyer for the April 12th Farmers Market Regional Program as well. We have a Charlie Masters and Roseanne here, who will be one of the guest panelist speakers on Masters Acres Beef. So we're excited to see them be a part of that. And there'll be a couple other guest speakers as well. So other than that, thank you. Oh, somebody need something?
I was just gonna say that anybody that does go to the meeting on the 12th, Round County will also be providing food for that. So
Free meal, so come on out, right?
The meeting on the,
What?
the meeting on the 12th, where is it located at?
it'll be in it'll be in the show arena at Morehead State's farm.
Hey, Molly, we'll make sure we got some signs posted out there to, if you can find the MSU farm, we'll get you to the arena.
All right, thank you.
Are we good? Sorry, I missed what was just said. I apologize. I was talking locally. All right, thank you all. If anybody needs anything in the meantime, let us know. We'll see you next time.